It's really about a duty and an obligation that we feel. And some of that's love, but it's a duty and an obligation to be the voice for people who no longer have it and to correct history that's been incorrectly written and postulated. And it's just our duty. I don't hope, for years, I guess I did suppose he might come home alive. There was that possibility. I do believe he was taken prisoner. But then that definitely changed to I hope he is in peace. And I hope they are all in peace wherever they may be. And that goes for the missing in all wars. So I think it is just up to us to carry the torch for them and to correct the wrongs, the misinformation that is in abundance on the web now, saying that this case is resolved. So, I think we will continue to fight.
He just turned 20 when his chopper went down. They searched for survivors, he wasn't found. He was missing in action, and still is today. His buddies came back, but he had to stay. He can't remember a day without pain. He lives with the fear of going insane. His life's like a story, it's too sad to tell. He dreams about heaven and wakes up in hell. Missing in action in a land far away. Feeling forgotten, trying to pray. Thinking of home, living first count days. Now it counts years.
And another unknown at this point, and I'll bring this gentleman's name up, is Dr. Henry Kissinger. I would like to think that he may be getting wind of this podcast, but I'd like to, speak to Dr. Kissinger about what he knew about Baron 52, because it was on him to get that peace treaty signed, which he did. It was on him to get Nixon out of Vietnam. And when Baron 52 was shot down, Dr. Kissinger, in my opinion, and I think anybody else might agree, he had a problem on his hands. And it's called Baron 52. And a message that said 4 prisoners were taken within 5.5 hours after Baron 52 went down. That's very significant. I have not heard anybody that has talked to Dr. Kissinger about that incident. And he's still alive today, as we all know.
Yeah, I queried the office, but he refused to respond. But it's clear he was involved because of the State Department message that went from Washington to Vientiane, to our embassy there in Laos, ordering them not to bring up the names of the crew of Baron 52 to the Pathet Lao because they are KIA. So he's not going to sign off on that message, and he sure as heck saw it, because you don't put a message out like that without Kissinger taking a look at it and saying, okay, yeah, we got to do this. In fact, he probably told him to do that, to send that message out. He responded, so I don't know. But they didn't want the peace accords disrupted. It had been disrupted back in December. Kissinger back then claimed peace is at hand, and the North Vietnamese decided, well, maybe not. So then we had the Christmas bombings, okay?
And that message also instructed.
So he didn't want that to happen again because, the POWs were due back in a week. So it all fits. And the other thing I think is interesting is we bring all this up and DPAA never even talks about it. They don't even indicate that it could possibly have anything to do with this. And yet it's all part of the picture, and you have to address it. And it's clear that that's what happened. They just blew them off for that period of time.
And communique to the American ambassador in Laos also said, you are to ensure that any of these crew members by name are also not on Red Cross POW lists.
Yeah, the Red Cross.
They even went to the extent of ensuring that there was no list with any crew member names from Baron 52 to include the Red Cross list. That's how all-encompassing they were, and it seems like they went the extra mile. I shouldn't use these words, to cover their tracks, when they should have gone the extra mile to pursue survival facts and survival evidence. They put more effort into sending messages to say these POWs are not POWs when they had nothing to substantiate that. That's my assertion. Whether people are going to point the finger at me saying you shouldn't be making those assertions, if you were me, and if you know what I know, and they had the documentation that we all possess and we know exists, you would change your tune.
Well, as I listened to all of this, I mean, some of what everybody has brought up is what I was going to say. And as this is the 50th anniversary of the signing of the peace accords, I think it's really important. I was really dismayed that other than you three and another gentleman who had written a very nice article commemorating the 50th anniversary in an Air Force journal, other than, Ralph and Heather have articles about this, there was virtually no mention in the news about this very momentous occasion, supposedly the ending of our involvement in the war. And I was really disheartened about that. I think we all were. And people ask me if I ever bring this up, why would you care for so long? What do you want? What do you want somebody to do about it now? And I just want to say that I think, I'd like everyone to reflect on if this had happened to a loved one of theirs, that they were treated so dishonorably and really just discarded. They were condemned to an indefinite, future as prisoners in hostile hands. What would they do? I don't think it's about my ambiguous grief. People sometimes, I think, sort of think that. I get that, response. It's really about a duty and an obligation that we feel. And some of that's love, but it's a duty and an obligation to be the voice for people who no longer have it and to correct history that's been incorrectly written and postulated. And it's just our duty. I don't hope, for years, I guess I did suppose he might come home alive. There was that possibility. I do believe he was taken prisoner. But then that definitely changed to I hope he is in peace. And I hope they are all in peace wherever they may be. And that goes for the missing in all wars. So I think it is just up to us to carry the torch for them and to correct the wrongs, the misinformation that is in abundance on the web now, saying that this case is resolved. So, I think we will continue to fight for Joe and for all of those. And, the others missing from Baron 52. And I thank you, John Bear, for, fighting to help resolve cases of all POWs and MIAs, everybody here. And I guess that's it.
Well said.
Well, Ralph, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about your research into the crash, and it's amazing how nobody really looked at this before, in depth to see exactly how Baron 52 did come down, and that there was survivability to the crash. Yeah, what's interesting is Schofield mentioned that in the oral history interview. I don't have his transcript right in front of me, but he mentioned that cargo door, and he said even I'm not sure how it's all put together, but he even said the top side of that cargo door is missing, and if they hadn't jettisoned that door, that top piece would still be there.
I just watched the interview with that you put on the that you posted on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
And I found that very interesting, very enlightening. And I could only tell you this. I remember very well standing in front of Colonel Humphreys and telling him that we had information that indicated that our 4 guys were still alive, and that I would be glad to show it to him if he would get a top secret SCI clearance. And he said, I had one, but I don't have it now, and I don't want one. And I said, well, at least come into the PI area here in your intel shop, and let me show you where this airplane, how it landed and what happened. Because I'm the one that found that crash site. And I told him that airplane came in and bounced and lost some of and I didn't know whether it was a wing or what it was. I thought it was the tail up there on the hill. And then it flipped and came down upside down. And it did not come in nose first. And he said, that airplane, I've flown them, and once they start spinning, nobody's going to get out. And I said, Colonel, that was not spinning. It came in straight. The front enders were still flying that airplane when it came in. And he said, nope. I said, there is no way that they were KIA at that site. He absolutely refused to listen to me there. And then later, my boss went into him and talked to him about what we had seen and what we thought was going on. I got a phone call in my quarters and said, come on out. We need you here. And so I went out and was there with my guys as we went through these first few hours. The other thing that is important to know is that when Colonel Humphreys declared them KIA, I had gone in to talk to him and begged him not to call them KIA, but to leave them MIA. And he said, I'm going to declare them KIA. But Colonel Humphreys was a attack fighter. He flew F-4s. And I will just tell you this about him. He wanted to be the last combat mission out of Vietnam. And so he stayed, he was flying an F-4 at the time, and he stayed on a tanker until he could be the last one out. And as he landed at Ubon, we were taking off for another combat mission. So that's just the attitude that he had. He did not like us. We did not belong to him. We belonged to security service from San Antonio. The other thing is that shortly after I returned to the States, I was attending a meeting up at No Such Agency. At the time, we couldn't refer to them, but I was up there for a training a week-long training, and I got a call that Bob Destat wanted to talk to me. We made arrangements for me to go down and talk to Bob, and I talked to him and told him why. And this was we were able to talk at the SCI level, and when I got through telling him what I knew, he said, "You need to shut up about that." He said, "All you're doing is giving the families hope that their sons got out alive, and they did not. And you need to be quiet about it because all you're doing is giving them hope." And then he kind of put a little bit of pressure on me to just not say anything anymore. And so for several years, I didn't. Then later on, Ron Schofield came to the headquarters at Kelly Air Force Base, and he worked in the same office as I did, and we were able to discuss at length what all happened. And as we discussed, I told him that I noted that the cargo door was not there. And he thought for a moment, and he said, "You're absolutely right. That cargo door was not there. I looked for it. I did not see it. If it had been there, it would have popped open on the ground. It was open before that airplane hit the ground." When I would fly as an observer, because that's what I did as the operations officer, that I was looking at the parachute spare, or where we kept the chest pack parachute, the extras, and they were just right straight ahead of me. And there were times when we would have 5 or 6 extra parachutes in that airplane. I don't know how many they had that night. There were often 5 or 6 across there, and I wore a parachute or a chest pack and put in there. Now let me tell you this about our guys: some of them wore backpacks, parachutes, and some of them wore chest packs. And if they wore a chest pack, their parachute, especially if they were taking fire, they reported they had been taking fire. They would have put their chest pack right next to their foot. So all they had to do was to swing it on, clip it, and they were out that door. I know that they could get out of that door in a minute and a half because I timed them. Joe, we call him Kiwi. Kiwi and Todd Melton were part of our Stanival team, and they were the ones who taught everybody else and made sure everybody else was qualified. And those guys could be out of there in just a fraction of a minute. Up in front where I think it was Todd set up front, we had a briefcase full of classified material. It was classified secret and above, and it was information concerning the communications that were taking place and had been taking place in Vietnam and Laos. That information was very, very necessary to identify what units were where in Laos and Vietnam. That was the main extent of what needed to be destroyed. When Ron Schofield went in, he had no previous experience going in. The PJs that went in with him, there were 2 of them, and those 3 did not have any previous experience looking at a crash site. Ron's job was to look and make sure that bag was gone and burned, or that it was retrieved, and that anything else could be done. We flew sanitized, means that down in our pants leg, we might have our wallet. We might have just ID card. I always took off my wedding ring because that had been mentioned to us in survival school. The opportunities to get out of that airplane, if it were flying straight and level, and which I think it was before it hit, if it had been it was taking flak, and those guys in the back could very easily have gone out just 1, 2, 3 and landed all together. They could have been picked up. They could have been picked up very easily there, rather than going on in to go in with the airplane. We practiced evacuating that airplane. The pilot had a bell that he would ring, and when he rang that bell, it meant get out of the airplane now. And that's what we listened for. And it didn't matter what we were doing, we would get out of that airplane. The first person that would have popped the door would have been Dale Brandenburg, because he was sitting at the very back, right close to the parachutes, and he would have been given the responsibility to pop the door and just kick it out. Here's something that nobody has mentioned, and I don't know if I should or not, but it was because it was classified at a SCI level back in those days. And I know all that stuff's been changed, but within 5 days after them bailing out, or after the crash site, the Vietnamese and the Laotians changed their entire communications system, plans, names, and things like that, which totally messed up that bag that we had. When I talked to Ron about that, he said it had never happened before during all the time he was in Vietnam and Thailand, which tells me that they didn't know how successful we were until our guys got caught. And it's very likely that one of them may have talked, but it changed immediately, just almost overnight.
Yeah,
let's see.
I read something about that too. It's similar to that, where they had changed. They changed like that. I think they were referred to as bin trams. Is that correct?
I have no clue. I don't speak Vietnamese.
Oh, okay. Well, they referenced the logistical areas there in Laos as bin trams, like they had bin tram 44, 38, and other. And the crash site, where the crash site was located, north of Charvain, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
It was just north of there. That was in the bin tram 38 logistical area. And I found this CIA document with the map of where those units were located. And in the intercept, it had said that they had captured 4 air pirates. They were en route from 44.
Right. And I had that information back in the day, and I wanted to share it with Colonel Humphreys, but he would not get an SCI clearance. Even asked for a waiver or a one-time blessing to get it, and I was not happy with him. He was not happy with us, and we had a very touch and go relationship ever after that, and I was there till December of '73.
Can I take you back to this reference to 44? Just real quick, since you know the area. Just west of Charvain, I found in the CIA document. Charvain?
We pronounce it Charvain.
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 Okay, just west of there, the Bintran is located as the Bintran 44, and I'm almost
Right.
thinking that was the reference to 44 that was in the intercept,
Very likely.
because that would have put,
Very likely.
because that's just southwest of where the crash site's located, and if they did possibly
Yeah.
parachute out, they would have been located somewhere in that area.
Absolutely. And I insisted until Bob DeStat told me to shut up. I had been vocal about it, that they had gotten out. Then I kept it quiet until Ron came and talked to us or came and worked for me. And we were able to compare notes. And because he was in a different unit than I was. And he was up at the 6994 Squadron.
Uh-huh. And I found also in some documents that Bob DeStott did the same thing to Chief Schofield and pulled him aside as well.
Not only that, he told him that he was a liar and that Ron Schofield, was telling lies to DeStat. I lost all respect, and his credibility is zero as far as I'm concerned. He tried to spin everything to his way of thinking. If he made up his mind, that's the way it was, no matter what. And I was a captain back in those days when he was pressuring me.
This concludes episode 2 of the Baron 52 MIA mystery. Please join us next week for episode 3 with special guest, former Deputy Secretary of Defense, Office of the POW-MIA, Dr. Roger Shields. Thank you for listening.
Be proud of this America. Realize we failed to bring our missing men back home. Prisoners of war. And MIA's America. What are we waiting for? Bring them home, bring them home. The eagle flies in chains until we have them home again. The eagle flies